Welcome to another broadcast of the Heavenly Sunshine Channel. We're continuing in our series. This is installment number 7 on biblical history and geography. Today is the 29th day of June, a Sunday, year of our Lord 2025. On today's installment, we're going to mention 3 countries that are mentioned in the Bible. The 3 countries I want to mention today are Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. Most of us, even non-biblical students, are aware of where Egypt is and a lot of facts about Egypt. We know the entire book of Exodus deals with the nation of Israel's exile in the country of Egypt for 430 years. They were enslaved in Egypt. The question that so many people want to know is, were the Israelites involved in any of the Egyptian monuments like the pyramids or the building of the Sphinx and so on? I don't think anybody knows, but from what I can see so far, there's no evidence to suggest that they were, but they very well might have been. But you would think that would have been mentioned in the Holy Scriptures were that the case. Exodus chapter 1, verse 11 says this: Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities. So they built some Egyptian monuments, but they just weren't the very well-known pyramids or Sphinx and other things like that. They were what the scripture says treasure cities. So not really sure what that would entail. Maybe something along the lines of a Egyptian-style Fort Knox or something. And the name of the cities were Pithom and Ramesses, which sounds like they were the names of former pharaohs, okay, or named after former pharaohs. So there were just 3 distinct historical periods for the nation of Egypt. And the first one was the beginnings of Egypt, which was just a loose conglomeration of people around the Nile Delta in Africa. And then was the middle period of Egypt, which is the period in which the Israelis arrived in Egypt after the Israelis left and all the judgments had occurred from the Lord upon the nation. It wasn't completely wiped out, but it kind of limped along for about 100 years. You can look at the historical record and find that this is true. But they did make a good recovery. It took them about 100 years later. The whole ordeal of the Exodus set them back. I'm talking about the Egyptians. Set the Egyptians back about 100 years in terms of advancement, technology, and just overall quality of their civilization. But they did go on to, obviously, great achievements, maybe over a century after the Israelis left. So I'm going to leave the discussion of Egypt now with just a little bit of information I pulled off the web concerning ancient Egypt, and that will conclude our cursory examination of Egypt, and we'll move on to discussing the kingdoms of Assyria and the kingdom of Babylon, both fascinating places in many ways. This next excerpt is a little excerpt I found on the web concerning Egypt, biblical Egypt, and then we'll move on to Assyria and Babylon.
Ancient Egypt's beginning is marked by the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, which occurred around 3100 BC. According to historical records, this unification was achieved by a king, later known as a pharaoh, who is traditionally referred to as Menes or Narmer. This event signifies the start of a long history of ancient Egypt, with the civilization's achievements in art and monuments continuing to fascinate people as archaeological discoveries reveal more about its past. The historical records of ancient Egypt begin with the unified state, and the conventional chronology starts around this time, although there are various proposals and discrepancies among historians. The civilization existed for over 3,000 years, from around 3100 BC to 30 BC, and it left behind numerous monuments, documents, and works of art that are still studied today.
Okay, so let's turn our attention now to the other two countries I want to turn to in this installment. I want to talk a little bit about the Assyrians, and then we'll go discover a little bit about the Babylonians. So here's a little blurb I found on the web concerning the conflict mentioned in the book of Isaiah and elsewhere between the Assyrians and the Israelis in biblical times during the reign of King Hezekiah. And surprisingly, I've been finding the AI source isn't necessarily anti-Bible or even left-leaning, which is a pleasant surprise. But here it is. And I think it sums it up very well for extra biblical source.
The conflicts between Assyria and Israel were part of a series of military engagements that led to the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel. The Assyrian conquest of Israel began around 740 BC under King Pul, with the first major deportations occurring in 732 BC, as noted in 1 Chronicles 5. The process continued under Tiglath-Pileser III and Shalmaneser V, with the final fall of the capital city of Samaria occurring in 722 BC under Sargon II after a 3-year siege. This event marked the end of the northern kingdom of Israel and the beginning of the Assyrian captivity, during which many Israelites were deported to Assyria. The Assyrian siege of Jerusalem in 701 BC was another significant event, although it did not result in the capture of the city. King Hezekiah of Judah paid a heavy tribute to Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, to avoid destruction. According to the Hebrew Bible, an angel struck down the Assyrian army, leading to Sennacherib's retreat. This event is also mentioned in the biblical books of Isaiah, 2 Kings, and Chronicles. The conflicts between Assyria and Israel were part of a broader pattern of Assyrian expansion and subjugation of neighboring kingdoms, which included the kingdom of Judah as well.
You might be wondering, is the modern nation of Syria named after the ancient nation of Assyria? I asked the question to the AI bot, and it gave me the following answer, which is this. Let's see, it says, yes, the nation of Syria is believed to derive its name from the ancient kingdom of Assyria. Mainstream modern academic opinion strongly favors the argument that the Greek word Syria is related to the cognate Assyria, ultimately derived from the Akkadian Assur. The name Syria is thought to have originated from the 8th century BC Luwian term Syriae, which corresponds to the Phoenician Assur and Syrim. You'll have to excuse me for my lack of expertise when it comes to pronouncing these names and terms. But anyway, it says, as recorded in the Sinekoi inscription, whatever that is. This inscription, found in Turkey, it says, provides evidence that the term Syria was used to refer to the region previously known as Assyria. Okay. However, there are alternative theories suggesting the name might be derived from other sources, such as the Phoenician name of Tyre or the Hurrian toponym. I've never heard of that word. Toponym, that's a word. Suri. Despite these alternative hypotheses, the prevailing view among scholars is that the name Syria is derived from Assyria. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so the third rival to the children of Israel that I want to mention is the very fascinating nation, city state of Babylon, which has very mysterious, both natural and spiritual ramifications for us. So I hope that brief look into Assyria gave you a little bit more insight into the conditions Israel faced at that time and how you can apply them to your own life. And now, as we looked at Babylon, Babylon was not only a competitor with the children of Israel, but Babylon and Assyria were rivals. And from what I understand, Assyria conquered Babylon once or twice, and Babylon conquered Assyria once or twice. They were both mighty nations in their times and have influences on us even to present day. Although, if you go back, if you look for remnants of their existence, you'll be hard pressed to find too much in our present day. So let's get into our discussion concerning the kingdom of Babylon as it relates to the biblical accounts.
The name Babylon is believed to have derived from the Hebrew name Babel, which is associated with the Tower of Babel. The native Akkadian name of the city was Babilim, meaning Gate of God. But the Hebrew name Babel is thought to have been influenced by the story of the Tower of Babel. The connection between the Tower of Babel and the city of Babylon is further supported by the fact that the Tower of Babel is often associated with the ziggurat Etemenanke, which was dedicated to the god Marduk in Babylon. The confusion of tongues, Latin, confusio linguarum, resulting from the construction of the Tower of Babel accounts for the fragmentation of human languages. God was concerned that humans had blasphemed by building the tower to avoid a second flood, and so God brought into existence multiple languages, rendering humanity unable to understand each other. Prior to this event, humanity was stated to speak a single language. Babylon is widely regarded as the birthplace of organized astrology. Babylonian astrology was the first known organized system of astrology, arising in the 2nd millennium BC. The Babylonians developed a system that combined astronomical observations with divination, attributing human characteristics to planetary influences and using the positions of celestial bodies to make predictions. They also invented the 12-sign zodiac, which became a foundational element of Western astrology. While there is speculation that astrology of some form may have appeared in the Sumerian period in the 3rd millennium BC, the earliest evidence of an integrated system of astrology comes from Babylon. Thus, while not necessarily the origin of all astrological practices, Babylon is credited with developing the first systematic and organized form of astrology. Babylon is the most famous city from ancient Mesopotamia, whose ruins lie in modern-day Iraq 59 miles, 94 kilometers, southwest of Baghdad. The name is derived from Baviel or Bavilim, which in Akkadian meant Gate of God, or Gate of the Gods, given as Babylon in Greek. In its time, it was a great cultural and religious center. The city was referenced with awe by ancient Greek writers and was reportedly the site of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Its reputation has been tarnished by the many unfavorable references to it in the Bible, beginning with Genesis 11 verses 1 to 9 and the story of the Tower of Babel associated with the ziggurat of Babylon. The city also appears unfavorably in the books of Daniel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, and most famously, the Book of Revelation. Scholar Paul Krywaksek notes that Babylon can blame her evil repute squarely on the Bible. Although none of these narratives speak well of the city, they were ultimately responsible for its fame, or infamy, in the modern age, which led to its rediscovery by the German archaeologist Robert Koldewey in 1899. Babylon was founded at some point prior to the reign of Sargon of Akkad the Great, 2334 to 2279 BC, and seems to have been a minor port city on the Euphrates River until the rise of Hammurabi, r. 1792 to 1750 BC, who made it the capital of his Babylonian Empire. After Hammurabi's death, his empire quickly fell apart. The city was sacked by the Hittites in 1595 BC, and then taken by the Kassites, who renamed it Karanduniash. The earliest mention of the city comes from an inscription from the time of Sargon of Akkad. It was briefly ruled by the Chaldeans, 9th century BC, whose name became synonymous with Babylonians to later Greek writers, notably Herodotus and biblical scribes, and then was controlled by the Neo-Assyrian Empire, 912 to 612 BC, before being taken by Nabopolassar, r. 626 to 605 BC, who established the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Babylon fell to the Persians under Cyrus II, the Great RC, 550 to 530 BC, and was a capital of the Achaemenid Empire, 550 to 330 BCE, until it fell to Alexander the Great in 331 BC.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this installment. I really hope this did some kind of good for some Bible students out there, that these facts we've examined today will lend some clarity to your study of the Holy Scriptures and give a context for those who aren't familiar with biblical times and events, whether they be believers or non-believers. So is this the end of my series? It may well be. This is installment number 7 in the series of biblical geography and history on the Heavenly Sunshine channel. So this is Heavenly Sunshine. Sunshine. Signing off for now, and we hope to see you again soon.